Okay, we're going to try this again. We had a little bit of interruption. My husband came in he had to run to Carbondale and came in the door. So we're going back at it. Comprehension is an active process in which the reader or the listener interprets and constructs meaning about what he or she reads or listens to based on prior knowledge about the topic. There it is. The big words. Based on prior knowledge about the topic. You have to teach background knowledge. You have to activate their background knowledge. That is why those introductions to those lesson plans are so very vital. You have to get the kids into the lesson, but more importantly, you have to activate that background knowledge. When you're working with first graders, even second graders, their comprehension is not going to be, for the most part, some will, but most will not have comprehension enough to understand completely what they're reading. You have to activate that background and play on that to give them something from which to pull if they get stuck. They need to be able to make connections between old and new knowledge. At that age, they may have precious little old knowledge. It may all be brand new for them. So you're going to have to connect it to something. One of the things that my nephew and I've talked about, he teaches high school social studies at Marquette Catholic High School in Alton. He said, yes, this coronavirus is a terrible, terrible thing, but he said on the upside, it's going to help me when I teach about the plague and how quickly it can spread, and when you don't know what's causing it, how you can make people sick. You're going to pull on the new knowledge to activate knowledge that they can have to make a connection with something from the Middle Ages. We have to do that with these little kids. We're not connecting to the Middle Ages, but we're connecting to other things they've seen. Just a heads up here, we're going to talk about some strategies, but I'm just going to give you a heads up here at this moment. And we're going to talk about this some more, and we will really get into this in the content reading section next semester. When we work with comprehension, too much of the time we do not, and I'm using that as a collective we, as I often do, teachers in particular, we don't teach strategies enough for our students. In other words, we teach them a strategy. We give them a strategy. We show them how to use it. But we don't keep coming back to it. We just assume that we can hit it once or twice and they have it. They don't. They need to show you that they have it, and you need to keep coming back to that. When we talk about a good reader and a poor reader, the difference between a good reader and a poor reader is that the good reader knows what to do when the comprehension breaks down. They know enough strategies, they are armed with enough strategies that they can figure it out when the comprehension falls apart. If something doesn't make sense, they know what to do to help themselves. That has to be taught and started right here at the very early grades. Comprehension development is enhanced by children's social interactions with others during reading and writing experiences. You see at the top, it says theory and research on comprehension of text. You should be thinking to yourself about whose theory that is and the social interaction should give it away right away. That is straight out of Vygotsky. That's why Vygotsky is always the go-to, especially with early literacy, when children are socially interacting in what he also, and Mari Clay, who was a big emergent literacy guru and yet a Goodman, called good talk. They're not just talking about who they're going to play softball with or kickball or who's going to be on teams for tag. They're talking about their reading, and those social interactions are Vygotsky at his best. Those kids learn best from good talk about the text with social interaction. Children need to have multiple experiences with a variety of texts and levels of texts on a daily basis to learn to comprehend. Right here, and I've looked and looked and looked for good resources in different places, on YouTube, on just Google searching and whatever, and basically what they have are research articles. What we're talking about here is with multiple and a variety of text, we're talking about wide reading. Wide reading is so very important. Not just for these emergent literacy learners, not just for these children, all the way up the pipeline, all through all the grades. So even if you don't have your cap set on teaching first and second grade, especially after the phonics mess here we had, wide reading is an absolute must in every classroom. So what do we mean about wide reading? Wide reading is reading across genres. Kids need to read across mysteries, nonfiction, fiction, fairy tales, whatever, nursery rhymes. They need to read across all of those places, all the genres. They also need to read across authors. Children, you're going to find in your classroom that children will get stuck on, maybe you did as a kid, you get stuck on one author and you really like his or her books. That's fine. But you need to read other things written by other people. What we do is we get into a rut and we only read by one particular author. Well, one particular author tends to use the same vocabulary, the same story schemes, the same story grammar, we'll talk about that in a little after a while, over and over and over and over again. If we want our students need to be, we want them to be, not if we do want them to be exposed to vocabulary across genres, across authors. When I taught second grade for several years, my students were all about the Boxcar Children. And they would read those, or they would want me to read one of the Boxcar Children books. I had a lot of them. They were chapter books, but I finally got to the point where I would read one, but then we had to read something else. And then we could go back and read another Boxcar Children, because if you're not familiar with the Boxcar Children, you have these brothers and sisters who, they never go to school, and they're always wind up in this mystery, and they always end up solving, and these are kids. At the end, well, yes, they're exciting books and whatever, but it never steps out of that scenario. They need to read widely. This is a concept, metacognition. I'm sure you've heard of metacognition. Metacognition basically is thinking about your thinking. It's one's own awareness of how his or her learning takes place. Prime example happened for me yesterday. I sat in on a webinar using how to use Zoom for teaching classes, which would allow it at least for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour that we have a license for, would allow it to be not face-to-face, but we would all just log in and do the same thing we're doing here. It's just we'd all do it together. Well, I'm not terribly tech savvy, and usually my go-to is Dr. Meyer. Well, I can call her on the phone. We've been texting and we've been talking, but to have her sit with me at the computer and help me with it isn't going to happen. And in this webinar, I got on to Zoom for the webinar, and after the professor said hello, I was lost. Completely lost. I don't learn that way. If she's sitting next to me showing me how to do it, that's one thing, but she was all over all over the screen, pulling this down and putting that up and clicking here and clicking there. I was lost right after she said hello. I stayed in for the whole time, but I couldn't figure it out. That's the whole thing. I know my metacognition kicked in and said, this is not how I learn. When it comes to comprehension, it means that students can articulate how they are able to comprehend something read and what strategies they selected to use and why. The only way, my little potato chips, that they're going to be able to tell you what strategies they used and why they used those strategies is if you have done a solid job of teaching them in the first place. Again, I've said this before and you're going to keep hearing me say it. We cannot just simply throw strategies at them and hope something sticks. We have to teach them, we have to work with them, we have to do it again, and then we need to have them teach them back to us so we know they have it. Then we need to make sure that they're using them. The big thing there is why. Why did you pick that strategy? Why did you select that particular thing? When I was teaching my reading in the content area at the high school level years ago at McKendree, I was rereading the chapter before I taught it, and the word was content. Well, it was content area reading, and I was reading the sentence, and the word I was putting in there was content, and it was making no sense to me whatsoever. I was reading it to myself. So it just wasn't making any sense. So I decided I needed to read it out loud, because then I also was hearing it. I got the audio going, and I realized that in that sentence, content was not content, but content. I had the emphasis on the incorrect syllable. And it made all the difference in the world. When I changed the word to content, the sentence made perfect sense. But we have to start teaching those little ones how to do that early on and stay on them. I can't tell you this, and I know you think I'm beating a dead horse. I'm telling you, it's not happening in the schools. Students are being shown these things, and then teachers move on. They don't have it. We have to get them solid with it. What we're going to do is we're going to stop here. I'm going to upload these two videos together, and we will stop here. I'm continuing as I can find things out on the internet. I'm trying to continue to upload things. What we're hearing from administration at McKendree is we just need to keep classes going. We realize, we get it. This is not how I want to do things, and this is not how you want to do things. I want to see your smiling little faces. But for right now, this is how we're going to have to do it, and hopefully we'll see how long this lasts. Of course, McKendree is closed for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Schools right now are closed for 2, but I think that's probably going to be extended a bit. But we'll see how it goes. So everybody is completely off the grid here, trying to make this work for you and for us. So hang in there, bear with us, and for whatever you do, stay healthy. Don't forget, buy toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and wash your hands. All right.